Hello everybody and welcome to another board game discussion video. Today's topic is all about the spirit of a board game, which is somewhat akin to the idea of the letter versus the spirit of the law and how something was intended, in this case being how a board game was intended to be played. So for me, I wanted to go over three major points here. First, diving a little bit deeper into what I mean, as well as some very simple examples. Secondly, some really specific and kind of fun examples of things where I've seen this in person. And last but not least, my general thoughts about the spirit of the game and why I think it's important for a gaming group. That said, as always, you guys know I love to hear from you, so let me know anything and everything in the comments below, what your personal thoughts are on this, if you appreciate the idea of the spirit of a game, if you follow it, if you don't care, whatever it happens to be, let me know. So getting right into my personal definition for this and a little bit of expansion on it, what I mean is this is how the game is intended for the gamers to view it. For example, if you have a competitive game, then ideally, if you are playing ideally, then you are going to be putting yourself in the best position possible. You are going to be taking the actions that are best for you personally. They will be getting you the most points, the most resources. They will potentially be hindering your opponents the maximum amount, whatever it happens to be. The thing is that a lot of this, especially in competitive play, can come down to you are attacking somebody else, but that is simply because it is the best action for you. If I prevent you from getting 5 points, whereas if I try to get my own points, I only get 3, I'm going to take your 5 away because it shortens the gap more than if I were to get my own points and stuff like that. That is the spirit of the game. The thing is, I know a lot of people are really trepidatious, especially when it comes to combative games, about, oh, I don't want to attack that person, I don't want to be aggressive, I don't want to do that. But it is the spirit of the game, and it does come down to that type of thing. We also see this in cooperative games. In a cooperative game, you have the understanding that people are being honest, unless you have a treachery mechanic. You have the understanding that people are doing their best, that they are trying their hardest, that they are making every possible effort to achieve the collective goal. We see a lot of problems with all of this when it comes to things like Kingmaker games. Settlers of Catan being a very infamous example, where if you're in a lower place, you know you can't win, then you can virtually choose who is going to win by giving other people really, really good deals for trades and things like that. And it can be very frustrating for all the other players because they've done everything right, but just because you, somebody else, has picked the other person to win, it means that they now have no chance. And in my eyes, that's a little bit unfair. So getting into a couple of specific examples, one thing that I have is from one of my favorite cooperative games, Shadows over Camelot. I played this just after it came out, and my group and I had a ton of fun, but we never won. It was brutally difficult for us. We constantly had problems trying to win, even when we weren't playing with a treachery card. On top of that, after a little while, Merlin's Company came out, the expansion for this game, and it was supposed to make the game even harder for the players. All of us just sort of looked at each other and we were really confused. We're like, the game is already virtually impossible. And it turns out that we weren't playing the game wrong, we were just playing really stupidly. In this game, the idea is that you have to progress evil. You either need to draw a particular card that does some bad thing, or you need to reduce your life, put out catapults, and a few other things, just depending. And essentially, we would always be drawing cards in order to keep our characters alive, maintain our hands, and maintain security around around Camelot. And the problem is, it was a very selfish way to play, and that is not how this game is intended. Whenever we tried to play the game the quote-unquote proper way, and we actually did it such that we were taking life hits, putting out catapults and all that stuff, we won very, very easily. But that's the thing, is that we weren't looking at the spirit of the game and the idea of the game. I also saw something similar to this when I played Citadels. So Citadels is an interesting little role-picking game, and there was one person I would play with where whenever he started getting down on his luck and he kept getting assassinated or stolen from, he would just randomly pick a role. It didn't matter if he was the first person picking or the last person picking or whatever, he would just randomly pick. And it was frustrating for everybody else as players, because it meant that there was no strategy that any of us could do in order to do anything. There was no way that we could expect or reject any particular choices with regard to roles that we could potentially get from this stack. Now that said, it's a relatively minor gripe, because we still didn't know what he had. He didn't even know what he had. But at the same time, in my opinion, it kind of violates the spirit of what the game is about, which again is always about what is best for me personally. What is the best thing that I can do in order to advance my own personal agenda and make it so that I have the best shot at winning. And it's just an interesting thing, because you can see it in a lot of different games where people will be going easy on each other, or somebody will be out to punish a particular player and stuff like that. And it just doesn't make sense. There isn't a real reason to squash the little guy unless you have a particular card or objective or whatever that says do this thing. Other than that, there is very little, if any, reason to do something along those lines. So, moving right into my third point of why it's important, in case it's obvious, I want the spirit of the board game to be alive and well. I expect and hope that players at my table will play the game as it is intended. I get truly frustrated when players will actively work against a group, or when they will sit there and just not care about what they get or how they get it or how they interact with other people or anything like that. It is really frustrating, because I mean, granted, games are for fun. It's not meant to be personal and all this kind of stuff, and it's not personal, but at the same time, I'm still there to have a good sort of brain workout and really think about what can I do in order to put myself in the best position. And if somebody else is just randomly doing whatever and not necessarily caring about consequences, it can be really annoying. A good example of this from my experience personally was Battlestar Galactica. We were playing a game of Battlestar, and there was one person who just wasn't really doing anything. They were just sort of meandering around, just moving around, but never really taking any actions. And so immediately we were like, oh, that person has to be a Cylon. The problem is that they were one of the best roles and they had one of the best powers, and we essentially had to lock them up. We eventually lost the game, and then they revealed themselves to be a human. And we were like, what were you doing? And he was just like, oh, I just thought it would be fun if I pretended to be a Cylon. No, that's not fun. That is against the entire point of playing this game. The idea is that you have specific people who are specifically good and specifically bad, and those people should play it as such. So it's just very, very annoying, particularly in a cooperative setting like that. Competitive games, I'm not as big about, but at the same time, there's a lot of different ways that you can view the spirit, where, you know, it's like, oh, you took that card, I really wanted that card. It's like, yeah, I know you wanted it, that's why I took it. Stuff like that I'm totally okay with. But when it comes to something like king making, where it's like, I'll give you 5 cards if you give me 1, and I'm just like, well, that doesn't make sense, that's not fair. And it just aggravates me to no end. But as always, that is more than enough rambling from me today. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Again, please let me know what your personal thoughts are in the comments below. Again, this is an important topic, I think. I think that it's something that we all run into at some level throughout our gaming careers. There is some person or people or game that just triggers folks. And I know that you all have experienced it, so I would love to hear your own stories about when you've seen stuff like this. Just let me know anything and everything in the comments below, as always, because you know I love to hear it. As always, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at my social media pages, where you can interact with myself and my channel in a bunch of fun ways. But with that, everybody, please stay safe if you're still under quarantine. But regardless, take care, and I will see you next time.